Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back. I am Van, and we are all the LFR family. Now, we are about to check out some Thomas Sowell, man. Thomas Sowell. And I know all of the people who don't want to learn anything are clicking off the video right now. Don't click off this video. You got to be here for at least 9 minutes and learning right alongside me, because that shows that the LFR family are not only growing big and strong with the 619,000 that we are right now, huh? 619. We bullies, but we're also going to be highly intellectual as well. And he's discussing his book, Intellectuals in Society. So that's why we're checking this out, because someone, well, let me see, more than 5 of you have sent me Thomas Sowell books, sometimes twice, but I appreciate it. I'm looking for a bookshelf right now to put right behind me so that I can show y'all all the books I have. But I'm about to start scaling out some time so I can actually get to enjoy my books, because you guys didn't buy them for them to stay on the shelf. Y'all bought them for me to read them. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So without further wait, let's get on to this.
From other visions prevalent in other segments of contemporary society or among elites or masses in earlier times, close quote. What is the vision to which contemporary intellectuals subscribe?
That intellectuals should influence, if not control, the kinds of decisions that are made in society, and more especially that they should promote the transfer of decisions from the masses to those who have, quote, more intellect. And given how I conceive of knowledge being its distribution, that would mean transferring decisions from where there's 99% of the knowledge to where there's 1% of the knowledge. And against that background, it's not at all surprising that things like central planning simply don't produce as good results as allowing all the millions of people to react in the marketplace.
You know, he's one of them type of people that just got wisdom all over his face. It's not because of the gray hair. It's not because of the glasses. He just looks smart. He just looked like he don't even got time to debate anybody. He just put the facts on the table and let it ride, and you deal with it how you please. That's something I really enjoy about him, but that's something I'm also learning from just watching him. And it's unfortunate that I just heard of Thomas Sowell this year in 2022. It's the first time I heard of Thomas Sowell. Wow, this dude is brilliant, man.
All right. Let me ask you a question that came in from Twitter. Travis814. All these questions are limited to 140 characters, so get ready. It's coming at you, but it'll go fast. Why does the liberal progressive mindset have such a stranglehold within the intellectual academic world? Why should the vision that you just described be so prevalent among intellectuals?
Well, among the many reasons, most academic intellectuals have no experience, no serious experience outside the academy. I remember I was once an economist for AT&T when it was the world's largest corporation.
Wow.
And when I returned to the academic world, they welcomed me as the prodigal son. You see, had returned from the evils of corporate America to the true nirvana of academia. And not only do they have no experience, they have every incentive to believe that they are brighter than other people and no more than other people, because they've been told that all their lives. I mean, you become a top intellectual because you've passed through all these successive filters. You've gotten into the best colleges. You've gotten into the best graduate schools.
Or even from second grade on, the teachers are responding to you as a kid who passes tests especially well.
Yes.
Right.
And so you have all of that in your background.
You write in Intellectuals in Society, if you happen to believe in free markets, judicial restraint, traditional values, and other features of what you call the tragic vision, there's no personal exaltation arising from those beliefs. But to be for social justice and saving the environment puts you on a higher moral plane.
Yes.
So the question here is, can it really be that simple that intellectuals across the American landscape tend to embrace the vision that you've described sheerly out of self-flattery and self-pleading?
Yes.
It is.
I don't think they know any better. And as a matter of fact, I think that they're so excited to have friends in their lives because they've been in the books for so long that, just like he just now responded in his last comment to the question that he was asked from Twitter, um, they don't really have the real life experience outside of academia. That's it. That's all they have is in those books. So them studying, doing well, doing well. God bless them. They've done some amazing things and were able to, you know, surpass a lot of their counterparts. But at the end of the day, when it comes to real life experiences, you know what I mean, they just didn't have that until later on, until they were able to calm it down a little bit, you know, start having people over, start making friends, you know, those type of things. And even then it was more in the I'm the adult who set up all this by working super hard, and this environment is going to be as controlled as possible, so none of the situations are going to affect me the way it would have if I were out there, you know, living and doing things and just experiencing things. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. That's that. When I first started talking, I thought I really had something good to say, but then I, like, halfway through, I was like, bruh, you are making one of them Kamala word salads. You do realize that, right? And then I was like, yeah. Go ahead and wrap it up. Let's turn it back to over to Thomas Sowell.
Don't forget, human beings have an enormous power of rationalization. Think of all the absurd things that have been believed throughout all of history. And I guess the one common denominator is that those absurd things typically were very flattering to those who believed them. They had the one true faith. They were the vanguard of the proletariat. You know, you just run through the whole list of the things.
By the way, I've been reading some Marx. I can't understand how anyone ever took that seriously. I mean, ever took it seriously.
Well, what are you reading?
Sentence by sentence, it's, oh, well, I began with the Communist Manifesto that he and Engels wrote.
It's a magnificent, if you want a model for propaganda, it is the masterpiece.
But there's actually absolutely no contact with actual economic reality.
So Marx is the gentleman who started the Marxist movement, right? If I'm not mistaken. Most times I am. That's why the comment section is so powerful under my videos. Because y'all be like, look, man, sorry, you're wrong, but I applaud you, buddy. I applaud you for trying to find the truth, but you're wrong. So this is what happened. Y'all be typing y'all tails off, man. And I appreciate it, because when I read it, I'm like, man, they really do care about my well-being, because they are looking out for me and my intellect.
No, there's no need for that, as many people are showing.
No.
You can become president of the United States with no contact with economic reality.
All right, two quotations. Intellectuals in society, quote, the intelligentsia often divide people into those who are for change and those who are for the status quo.
Yes.
Candidate Barack Obama. We are the change we have been waiting for.
Yes.
Tom?
People who say things like this act as if they're saying something new. This is what was being said back in the 1790s, and ever since then, you know, that there's nothing older than the idea that this is new. And
Thomas Paine, we have it in our power to make the world over again.
There you are.
Right.
But in point of fact, there's again, this is one of those totally unquestioned and unsubstantiated statements. John Dewey was saying, you know, that made the same thing some 60 years ago, that those of us who are for change have to fight against those who are for the status quo. Now, the people he was talking about, people like Adam Smith was not for the status quo.
Of course not.
As I mentioned in the book, why would Adam Smith spend a whole decade writing a 900-page book to say how contented he was with the way things were? I mean, when you spend a decade writing a 900-page book, something is bugging you. You know, I mean.
That is true, man. That is true. That's why it's so difficult for me to set my tail down and finish writing. I want to write so daggone bad, man, but it's difficult to do. It's so difficult, but it's necessary. Y'all like, what you gonna write about? I would love for y'all to read it once I'm done. I'm so serious, man. If y'all will read what I'm writing, That will be like I can go ahead and retire from YouTube and I ain't even gonna make a lot of money, but it'd be like, you know what I mean? They actually enjoy something that came out of this big old head of mine, you know what I mean, that I put inside of a book. I might even call it I ain't gonna call it a manifesto that has negative, you know, some people see that as negativity.
Right. And anyone who ever bothered to read Adam Smith would see that he is pretty ticked off about a lot of things.
Once again, two quotations. You quote, at a number of points in Intellectuals in Society, you quote Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. Here's one of them. As Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes said, the word right is one of the most deceptive of pitfalls and a constant solicitation to fallacy. That's quotation one. Here's quotation two. Barack Obama, quote, healthcare should be a right for every American, close quote.
Well, there's the fallacy. No, it's the word right. It's amazing. And in one sense, I simply cannot explain it. People say we have a right to affordable housing, decent health care. We have a right to all kinds of stuff. And the question is, where did this right come from?
By the way, it is literally the case that I heard on the radio the other day. One of the questions in healthcare is plastic surgery, whether it'll be taxed or. I literally heard someone say that women have a right to Botox treatments.
Yeah, you are.
Just thought I'd mention that for you, Tom.
Yes, well, but that's no more arbitrary than all the other things that are called rights.
What happens is one of the negative things that happens to us being so spoiled, being that we are Americans who have everything at our fingertips. We can't complain about not having or not achieving something because we've had everything thrown at us. Like, even if we don't have access, if we don't have immediate access to something, we have the resources nearby. If we don't have the resources, we know somebody with the resources. If we don't have the resources nor know anyone with the resources, we have the ability and the reach to be able to gain access to those resources as long as we are willing to go after it. Here's the thing. The more, because I'm telling you right now, Americans are spoiled as hell. That's why we complain so much about every little thing, is because people that complain a lot are people who are used to having a lot. You don't see people who live on the street complaining about anything. You walk up to them and you hand them a sandwich, they're appreciative. Unless they have some habit and they want you to hand them a bottle of liquor anyway. But at the end of the day, even our homeless, and I mean no disrespect when I say this, but in comparison to other countries, like our homeless, some of our homeless are living better than people who live in actual, dwellings in other countries, if that makes any sense. So we are going to consider everything a right. We're going to want everybody to have everything I have because we eat good and we get real fat over here and our pockets are big and we got bank accounts and everybody got a car and relatives all got their own places and nobody's staying with each other anymore. It's like we feel we're above paying for it. We're above working for it. And it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But if you are someone who's running the free world and you say that it's a right that everyone has it, then that means that it's going to be paid by someone. Who is it going to be paid by? It's going to be paid by the people who are actually doing things right and going out there, making sure that their futures and their present and their families' well-being are in order. And they're busy paying their own bills, but now they have to pay for everyone else's. That's my 2 pennies.
I mean, right now we're going to have this trial of these terrorists in a court of law, which is absolutely unprecedented and absolutely absurd. And the question is, where did that right come from? Well, it's not in the Constitution. It is certainly not in the Geneva Convention. It's just that by loose thinking, people say, well, prisoners of war get treated that way. Yes, they're not prisoners of war. The Geneva Convention said what prisoners of war were. People who adhere to the Geneva Convention get the protections of it. But during the Second World War, when some German soldiers at the Battle of the Bulge put on American uniforms infiltrated the U.S. line and they were captured, they were simply lined up against the wall and shot and killed right there.
Whoa.
And it was not something secret. The Army filmed it.
Woo.
And I've seen the films on the History Channel.
Really?
There was no question. If you don't play by the rules, you don't get the protection of the rules. It's that simple.
Right. This leads us to segment 4, Intellectuals
Wow.
in War. From Intellectuals in Society, discussing the role intellectuals played between the two world wars. Quote, one of the most remarkable developments of the 1920s was an international movement among intellectuals promoting the idea that nations could get together and publicly...
I love the way he hold the book up when he's advertising Thomas Sowell's book while he's asking a question from the book. You know what I mean? He's not asking a question from the book. He's reading a portion, a part of the book, and he's having him explain it. That's genius. Wow. Wow, that is genius, man. That's extremely smart, bro. To have the author of the book on there and get him to explain certain passages in the book. That is smart.
renounce war. Yes. What were they thinking?
I guess they weren't thinking, they were reacting.
I guess they weren't thinking.
They were reacting to the horrors of the First World War, which most of those intellectuals had supported, by the way. And now they decide, no, that was so awful. We have to renounce war. There's no thought that, yes, you can renounce war. That does not stop your neighbor from building up the biggest army in the world and coming in and killing you. It's much like this. It's much like the thinking about gun control. You know, that you say, well, listen, I don't think people should have guns. Hey, I wish people didn't have guns. But the fact is that passing a law does not stop them from having guns.
That's right.
It just makes you defenseless.
Right.
One of the things I think I mentioned in there in passing is that in Britain, the burglary rate is far higher than in the United States. And moreover, British burglars do not case the place before they go in. Now, if you're in the United States and you're going to bust into someone's house in the middle of the night, you may be met by a hail of bullets.
Right.
In Britain, they have made burglary a safe occupation. It's like OSHA for burglars.
Vietnam, Intellectuals in Society again.
They just break up in your daggone house and make themselves a sandwich, get them something to drink, take a nap, probably take a bath or something. And if you walk in the house, okay, you just walk in. We're not supposed to have guns here, bro. What you doing with a gun in your house? I'm calling the police. Let me dry myself off. Can you throw me a towel, please? So I can get out of here, man. You crazy. I wouldn't have broken up in here if I would have thought that you was gonna be all crazy. Where they raised you at? You must be American. What you doing out here? Huh? You angry. You angry. Once I dry off and put on some clothes, man, you need a hug. I'm gonna give you a hug. Is that all right? All right.
Among the many implications of the war in Vietnam was that it once again illuminated the role of the intelligentsia in influencing the policies of a society and the course of history. Close quote. We didn't lose the war. The intellectuals surrendered on our behalf.
Yes. In fact, the communists themselves in later years admitted that there was no way they could have defeated the United States on the battlefield. And in fact, that the Tet Offensive, which was the turning point, that the communist guerrilla movement was virtually wiped out in the South. But the intellectuals saw that as a victory for the communists, and the war was unwinnable. And once a democratic country decides that a war is unwinnable, it becomes unwinnable.
Right. Now, Tom, Vietnam raises a point that just has to be addressed, and that is the special place of intellectuals in the Democratic Party. Isn't that a fair point, that the Democratic Party became, at least as regards the Vietnam War, became wholly influenced by intellectual opinion, correct?
Yes.
How come?
But it's also true that Nixon was, and it's not.
No, that's true. That's true.
See, because here's the thing: Machiavelli thought of intellectuals as influencing events by influencing the rulers and changing their minds. That isn't the role, as Vietnam clearly showed. Nixon didn't care a damn for the intellectuals.
Right.
But they created a climate of opinion in which, if he continued that war, he would pay too high a political price. So he threw South Vietnam to the wolves, signed a negotiated agreement, and they love negotiated agreements. It doesn't matter what it says. So long as you sign it and you win the Nobel Prize, who cares if a few million people get killed in the aftermath?
What's the transmission mechanism from intellectual opinion to the larger climate of opinion? This is where the media comes in.
Oh, there are many. Oh,
Right.
yeah, there are many transmission belts. I mean, the schools. all from the elementary school right up through the graduate schools, the media, now increasingly the churches. Even
Wow.
churches that we think of as conservative are out there pushing the liberal agenda.
That is true. That is true. But why is that happening? I think it's happening because of inclusion. I think it's happening because, and forgive me for saying this, I think a lot of what's happening in this country, including but not limited to the LGBTQ community, you know, with all the extra letters and whatnot. I think in all the extra people that's becoming gay over the years, because we look at percentages all the time about crime rates and jobs and all this other stuff, but do we ever talk about the percentage of how many people are claiming to be within the LGBTQ community within the last 2 to 5 years? What's happening is when more and more and more people in your family, when more and more people in your circle become that which you once stood against because it was not aligned with the word of God, you then have a soft spot for your family and your friends. So what happens is some of your own morals you change a bit for them. You shift some things for them. Same thing happens in the church. You see these people all the time. These are my congregants. These are also my tithing members. Tithing members in order to keep these lights on in this church, in order to keep the water flowing in this church, in order to keep my bills paid as the pastor in this church. You know what I mean? I know some pastors who have, I know some pastors who do just preach the word of God, but they lose so many members. It's crazy. And when I say they lose members, I mean they lose enough members to have to get their doors closed down, because there's so many churches in the hood, that there's so many churches in urban communities, period, that as soon as one church no longer or starts preaching the actual word of God and standing by everything God want his word to be preached as, people start leaving the church, man. They out. So the pastors have a decision to make. The decision is, I can bend and start appeasing those who are not living the way that they need to be living, or not even trying anymore. They just, look, I gave up. I am who I am. And at that point, it's like, okay, you know what? God don't make mistakes. We all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. God will forgive you and love you regardless. And the next thing you know, we're supporting the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I wonder how they're going to start supporting pedophilia at this point, because looking at these new videos of people dancing and dressed as the opposite sex around kids and stripping, and the kids walking up and giving them money and everything, you wonder what's happening next, bro.
Intellectuals in the Cold War. Again, intellectuals in society. You're talking about Edward Kennedy. Senator Edward Kennedy was a leading voice for the nuclear freeze, joined by many other prominent political figures and by many in the media, close quote. Now, this nuclear freeze movement reaches its most potent moment just as Ronald Reagan is setting in place the policies that actually
Ended the Cold War.
end the Cold War.
Yes.
How come? Why do they?
But this goes way back to at least the 20s. The idea that an arms race is wrong, and not only wrong, but is dangerous, that will lead to war. And of course, the counter evidence, again, like so many things that intellectuals believe, it is not subjected to any kind of empirical test. because between the two world wars, you had all these arms agreements and renunciations of war, and all of that just encouraged the Axis power to feel they could win this war because the West was too gullible to arm themselves or defend themselves.
Tom, we're talking about the Cold War. What do you make of it that Harry Truman, who puts in place the containment, the fundamental structures of containment that remain in place for over 4 decades, Harry Truman takes office, was vice president for less than a year before taking office, assumes the Soviet Union is our ally because that was what he, and has within a year he discovers that in fact they have aggressive intentions. He changes and constructs American containment. In my judgment,
this dude's smart as hell too, man. The way he asks questions just let me know that he probably knows just as much, if not more, than Thomas Sowell, because clearly he's a historian. He knows a great deal of what he's talking about. He's asking him a question, but he's giving him all of the answers before, so that when he gets down to the question part, this dude has described things so effortlessly. Like, make sure there's not one bit of context missing from this question, because I know what I'm talking about too, bro. What's this dude's name, man?
he's a kind of heroic figure, I would argue, and I think you agree with that. And then at so he begins our position in the Cold War. He stands up to the Soviets, and Ronald Reagan is the one who ends it. Now let me tell you about this. The educational background. Harry Truman finished high school.
Yes.
Ronald Reagan's college degree comes not from some ancient Eastern university, such as those where you studied, but from Little Eureka College, set in the farming towns of central Illinois. Is that significant?
It may well be, because they didn't have to fight off all the nonsense that would have been taught at these very prestigious institutions.
Intellectuals in Iraq. You quote, in Intellectuals in Society, you quote New York Times columnist Paul Krugman. New York Times columnist and Princeton economist Paul Krugman. Quote, to understand what's happening in Iraq, follow the oil money, which already knows that the surge has failed, close quote.
Yes.
So the surge worked, of course. Paul Krugman was just plain wrong.
Yeah.
So what did he think he was doing?
Trying to explain to other people is very tough. I mean, in some senses, I mean, I am often baffled. Why did Larry Summers, try to hang on at Harvard? The man had millions. He could have stood up and said what he thought. The whole notion of people being independently wealthy is very shaky for me, because there are people out there with multi-millions who are afraid to speak their mind.
Right.
And there are other people who can barely make the rent who will say, just what they're thinking.
That's because the people who are broke feel like they don't have anything to lose. The people with the millions, they feel like they're going to lose it all, and they're not going to be able to live this luxurious life anymore, and they're going to be an embarrassment to their families, and then they're going to go and commit suicide because they can't handle it. People don't have anything to lose. Sometimes you need to listen to those people. I mean, the sensible ones. But people don't have anything to lose, but everything to gain. I would think that they will come with a more positive outlook on everything. Like, it would just make more sense, rather than I don't have anything, I can't do anything, none of us can, you've been holding me back, and it's clear because blah 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 blah. History's what about 1619? You know what I mean? That does happen, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't. Like, people who already have their nest eggs, they allow greed to shut them up. They allow greed to shut them up. But then when the ones with the big nest eggs, like, say, Kanye West, and I ain't talking about his views on Jews, or I didn't even mean to rhyme. I'm not talking about his views on Jews, all right? But even people are laughing at him and hoping that he fails because they want to see him lose his billions. Someone sent me a text the other day of a GIF of a meme it was supposed to be a funny meme saying that Kanye West is no longer a billionaire, and people are laughing at that, almost to say that's what he gets. You should know how to shut your mouth when you're making all that money. Just be quiet, man. Fly right. You've already made it. Don't be out there being crazy. You know, we can't do that. We can't do that. Only they can do it. You know? Huh? We can't do it. They can. You not one of them? Then you need to act like one of us, all right? And keep it on the hush hush, all right? And that's the part that's messed up, man. That's the part. So people do want to speak up, but they just too pansy to do it.
Right. All right. Segment 5, intellectuals and the rest of us.
And the rest of us.
Again, intellectuals in society. There is a spontaneous demand from the larger society for the end products of engineering, medical, and scientific professions, but the demand for public intellectuals is largely manufactured by the public intellectuals themselves.
Yes.
Explain that. How do they manufacture demand for their own services?
Well, one thing is by making alarming predictions, offering solutions to our problems. And if they didn't do that, if Noam Chomsky had just kept on staying in linguistics, neither of us probably would have ever heard of Noam Chomsky. He would have been just as famous around the world among linguists, but nobody else would have heard of him.
What do you make of global warming?
I think it's a classic example of the need for crusades. Now, many people are shocked by these emails. I'm not at all shocked by them. I read the original UN study years ago, and I was just curious as to how they were going to deal with the question.
Now, I know he says many things differently, like crusades, their need for crusades. I don't understand that. If you wouldn't mind explaining that to me in the comments from your understanding of it, that would be appreciated.
That the temperatures went up first, and then there was the increase in carbon dioxide.
Right.
Because you can't say that A causes B if B happened first. And so I read this, and I could see they were tiptoeing through the tulips in the way they phrased things and so forth. They couldn't confront that. And now we're finding out that they knew darn well they couldn't deal with all the evidence.
So it fits the pattern of a group of intellectuals, climate scientists who have a very narrow competency, suddenly proclaiming that there's a crisis, scaring the rest of us, thereby creating a demand for their services,
Yes.
not as climate scientists alone, but as a kind of high priestly caste that can tell us all how to live and save the entire
Yes.
planet, and in the meantime generate billions of dollars worth of government programs to fund their research initiatives. And so it's a racket.
Yes.
All right.
But again, you have to take account of the ability of human beings to rationalize. I'm sure there are scientists out there who believe some or much of what they're saying, and there are other scientists who believe the opposite. But the ones who are pushing global warming are doing their damnedest to make sure that those who believe the opposite don't get heard in the public.
So shouldn't there be some large-ish body of climate scientists who say the data really does suggest that we're headed into trouble here, but precisely because my saying so as a climate scientist will look like special pleading, we as a community of scientists should be even more careful about being completely transparent, pushing the data out to the public. They should overcome the hurdle that it looks like self-pleading. Why isn't that taking place?
There's no payoff to that.
All right.
Imagine yourself as an assistant professor in some department where your senior colleagues who are going to vote on your pay, among other things, have millions of dollars in grants handed out to promote global warming, and you say just what you just now said, and they'll say this guy is incorrigible.
All right.
So they get paid to promote global warming? So we have something else that we need to research. This is called global warming. This is the reason why the Earth is doing this and the Earth is doing that. A whole lot of money is behind this for studying. If it goes through, a lot of people's pockets get fat. But Some people who are pushing it are saying it's to save the country, it's to save the climate. But the people who are calling it hogwash are saying, nah, it's a hustle. See, this is the type of stuff that gets me, because if I'm outside in the winter and it's 80 degrees in the winter, I'll be like, I guess global warming is a thing. What would you say to someone like me, who in the winter it feels like summer, in the summer it feels like winter, in the spring it feels like, you know what I mean? It's like everything is discombobulated. Like in the middle of the winter, around Christmas, people still wearing shorts. People are going to say, you know what? Global warming. What's stopping people from saying that? And what's wrong about that is what I'm asking. Because I get it, man. When there's big issues on the table like this, and politicians are fighting it a lot, or politicians are pushing it too much, there's something wrong in the sauce, man. It's something wrong. Like, I ain't even eating it. I don't even want none of it. Nah, you keep it. I don't want no sauce on mine. You keep that. That's what made me not want to pay attention to politics for so long, because they play so many daggone games. Everybody present the side that supports them and their mission, their pockets, or their desire just to shut somebody down. What if you are shutting somebody down who's actually out there trying to find out how to save the planet, but you thinking that the cause is pointless? You know, you can't have half of the scientists saying it's true, then half of the scientists saying it's false, and then still be so adamant about what you think it is if you're not a scientist. I don't get that. So they present their sides to us in debates, and we do our own little Googles, okay, because we think we're better than scientists at this point. We don't think we're better than scientists. We just don't trust them. We don't trust them, man. It's been so much wool pulled over our eyes just for the sake of running I'm not going to say just for the sake, because sometimes that's what it takes in order to run a country or run a world. You can't tell the minions, the peons. You can't tell the peons everything. Like when you run your household, do you tell the children everything? No, you do not. Well, the government's not going to tell us everything either. They'll give us some. They'll throw us some stuff so that we can have debates about it and feel like we're just as involved as we believe we are. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, we are made privy to what they feel safe for us having in our minds. Okay, but the side that are against them will make sure that we get all or some of that information, especially the information that will make them look bad, the people who made it up. So at the end of the day, man, it's all about what you believe. It's your belief. Do you believe in them or not?
Tom, what explains the exceptions? During the 1930s, intellectual after intellectual visits Russia and says, this is the land of the future.
Oh.
And Malcolm Muggeridge and a handful of others, but a tiny number of other intellectuals say, no, it isn't. Stalin is a barbarian. After the Great Depression, the entire economics profession is dominated by John Maynard Keynes.
Yes.
And then along comes Milton Friedman, and he just won't have it. What explains these exceptions among intellectuals who stand up?
That's for another book for somebody else to write. In the preface, I mentioned that I will have very little to say about Milton Friedman, not because he's not one of the most important people of the 20th century, but because he is such an exception to the general pattern that I'm trying to explain.
Okay.
I will leave it to someone else to figure out the exceptions.
All right.
And then Milton Friedman actually taught Thomas Sowell. He actually was his professor at a point, right? Or he was his mentor. He was one of those. Because I remember when I checked out some Milton Friedman videos, make sure that you go check them out if you haven't already. For the few people who are still on the video, I appreciate you. Y'all are amazing. And make sure y'all hit me up too so I can send you a hat or something, because I like when people last with me until the end. You know what I mean? Because we got so many videos that I want you guys to check out. But anyway, yeah, so he's not going to say too much about Milton Friedman, especially if it's going against something that Milton has said, because he has too much respect for him. That right there is missing too. That's missing. That's missing. That's missing. That was almost 40 minutes. Y'all let me know whatever y'all want me to know in the comments below. And if you have yet to hit that subscribe button, please make sure you do so on your way out the door. Once again, guys, I am Van, and now we are all the LFR family, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video, hopefully inside the Patreon as well. Y'all have been amazing per usual. Love y'all. How do I cut this off?